didn't get to ask you the other day. Maybe now's not the best time. But you guys still hanging in there with your daughters?
Yeah, no, we've had some improvement on that. We had late last fall had a stomach surgery, and that it's always interesting. But she's made some progress. We're doing some better.
Wow. Well, good for y'all.
Yeah. Very much blessed. Kind of made a turn there between Thanksgiving and Christmas. We've tried her every now and then on food into her stomach through her feeding tube, and up until now she hadn't been able to really stand that. But now she's tolerating it exclusively. We've switched to that 100%. So again,
wow.
that's a big moment for us. So we're definitely blessed.
Well, next thing you know, it'll be going through her mouth.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, she does like to taste the food. She just can't swallow it. So we're getting there.
Well, good for her.
Yeah, we're excited.
Who all are we supposed to have, Abby, today with us? Is this the entire city council and/or county commission, or just selected members, or those who just wanted to be here?
We sent the invite to everybody, and let them decide if they wanted to come.
Okay, gotcha.
I know Kurt, he was coming on. I just talked to him a while ago, so Kurt should be here.
I'm here.
There he is.
Oh,
Mayor.
There he is. How do we mute him? Can I automatically mute him?
Please do.
Surely there's a way to do that.
As co-host, have that permission.
Once kids start screaming, I'll mute myself.
Kurt, I bet you can hear a pin drop at your house.
Yeah, about 3 o'clock in the morning, maybe. That's about the only time.
Does it look like most of the commissioners are on that?
Yeah.
Hey, there, I see her. Okay, there's Kim Birchfield, and there's Mr. Simmerly. We got, okay. There's Jeff Treadway. Wow.
How you feeling, Jeff?
Yeah, we got about 16, I think.
On the men, Kurt. On the men.
Good.
Have you not been so well, Jeff?
Oh, they had to take out a bad gallbladder about a week and a half ago.
Oh, gosh. Okay. Well, you'll feel better when that's all settled in a little bit. I had that done too, and that changes everything.
Yeah, I could tell it. Just still a little weak from the hospital, say, you know.
And let's see. There's Roger Day. Surely we can permanently mute him. See if that's possible. And there, he's unmuted. Watch out, everybody. Hang on to your wallets. Roger Day's unmuted. And there is Logan Engel. What a nice surprise to see her.
Hello?
Ah, there we are. Wow, a living room recipient.
In person.
That's right. Live and in the flesh. Normally it's just my picture, so.
I'll give me some, Logan. I'm used to just seeing your picture.
I know, it's me. I exist. I'm real.
We were beginning to think maybe Daniel had made you up.
He won't share his best assets with us.
Well, don't worry. She's been here 6 months and I've never met her either.
I know. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
World of COVID, you know?
Daniel? Oh, it was funny.
Daniel runs a tight ship up there.
That's what I'm noticing. Well, it's 6 o'clock if we want to go ahead and get this moving and get started. And welcome everybody to the Carter County Commission, Elizabethton City Council joint workshop session. I guess everybody knows this is kind of going to be just a collaboration on some ideas that we're going to allow Pat Hardy and Rick Hall to lead the discussion. So I will go ahead and let Kurt speak if he has anything to say, or turn it on over to those guys.
I would just like to do the same as Mayor Woodby. I appreciate everybody getting on here tonight. I know it's tough, especially on a Monday night after you've worked all day. Well, at least some of us have worked all day. Not Kim. Looks like Bill's relaxing in his easy chair there. So we appreciate everybody getting on here and taking time to help make this Carter County, Elizabethton a better place. We appreciate everything that you guys do on the county side as well to keep us rocking and rolling. If you all wouldn't mind tonight, if we start, if we could get Mr. Bill Carter to say a little opening prayer for us tonight. Bill, would you mind doing that? He's muted. Hey, Bill, unmute your microphone there, buddy.
I think he does it on purpose.
There we go. How's that?
There you go, Bill. Thank you.
Are y'all okay? Let's pray. Our gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity that we can gather together in our land of freedom, that we can discuss our common situations and for the betterment of the community as a result that we see. Pray you be with each of us here, be with our families, be with those that are sick. May you take a special hand in healing, and we're thankful for what you're doing for Rusty Varan and his progress. Be with us, leading guys through this meeting. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. And I guess without further ado, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Pat Hardy. Is Rick on here as well? I haven't seen him.
Rick is on here, yeah.
I see Rick. There you go. Sorry about that. We'll turn it over to the gentlemen. Appreciate you guys.
And let me start by just introducing myself and Rick. For those of you that may not know us, my name's Pat Hardy. I actually live in Elizabethton, so this is fantastic for me, although I wouldn't have to drive far, I guess, for a meeting anyway today. But it's a big deal because I care so much about Elizabethton. But I've been here for about 25 years now. I live over on West E Street between the junior high and the high school. But I work for MTAS, the Municipal Technical Advisory Service, which is a division of UT's Institute for Public Service in the land grant part of UT. Rick Hall, who many of you, especially on the county side, would know. Rick is a finance consultant with CTAS, the County Technical Assistance Service. And he's been with them for 28 years. Rick and I are both graduates of the City Management School at ETSU. I served in city management profession in West Texas and Minnesota, and then Nashville before I moved out here to Elizabethton. And I know Rick was in a couple of counties, Oneida County, and
Scott
anyway,
County.
Where?
Scott County.
Scott County. Okay. So anyway, that's a little bit about us. So we're thrilled to be here. Rick and I are actually in the same office over in Johnson City, so we get to collaborate occasionally. But this project has been a really big deal for us because it's so close to home. So I'm going to see if I can share my screen here. There we go. And see if this works. Oh, it does. Okay, so everybody should be seeing my PowerPoint screen. If not, say something. All right. Well, listen, I want us to build off of the workshop that we had back in December of 2019, if you can believe that.
Wow.
When I went to look at that report, I went, wait a minute, that was 2019? You're kidding me. But it was. So it's been a year since we've readdressed anything that we did at that time. That workshop was a big deal. We held it up at, I think, up by kind of where the health department is, if I'm not mistaken. So anyway, COVID has put a wrench in our plans to have moved on that a little bit early, but it certainly didn't stop us. So I want to go back to that a little bit. A couple of the things that came out of that were, first of all, I think a real sense of our ability to work together and to look forward. We recognized the different barriers that we have between us, the biggest one being that there's a jurisdictional boundary. That jurisdictional boundary exists for a reason. Each of our jurisdictions provide different services. Sometimes those things overlap. Sometimes we have conflicting goals. But we did learn pretty quickly at that last joint meeting how much we also have that we do together and that we have in common and that we want to do together. So that want to work together, that proactive sense has driven us to this meeting today. We found out about all kinds of possibilities that existed between us at that last meeting. So I want us to spend about 10 minutes or so. And by the way, we'll be finished here and hopefully by 7 o'clock. I mean, depending on you guys, but I want us to spend about 10 minutes talking about what happened at that workshop, because a lot of you were not there. And it was, I thought, a really successful workshop and a really big deal. Agenda-wise tonight, we're going to talk about that. We're going to look at goals that came from that workshop and our capacity to achieve those goals. We're going to look at the existing joint economic development structure. Rick Hall and I looked at some successful structures across the state and what they had in common. Then we want to talk about what, if anything, we want to do, who should do it, and then where to go from here. And Rick and I have provided some suggestions along the way, but please remember, we really don't have a dog in this fight. It's your organization, your future. We just have are going to throw out some suggestions just to sort of move the conversation forward. Rick and I will take notes along with Abby, who, by the way, we so appreciate, and she does such an unbelievable, great professional job. For those of you who don't know Abby, she's the mayor's assistant over at Carter County. I'm not sure of her title, but she's a jack of all trades. But anyway, we're going to write a report so you'll have something in your hands when we get done with today that specifies what we all agreed on. So given that, our previous workshop, I didn't list all of the things that came out of that workshop, but there were a few that I think highlight just what's going on that I wanted us to talk about. So the first thing we talked about was, what are we already doing together that seems to be working for the most part? Animal control and animal shelter. I know it's been a year since we met, and some of these things don't always hold together perfectly over the course of a year, but some do. Solid waste and recycling, the library, the joint economic and community development. That structure has been established, even though it's semi-dormant now. A lot of parks and rec activities. The Elizabethton Fire Department doing the training for the county volunteers. The joint funding of the emergency and the rescue squad. The Carter County Health Department. And stuff that a lot of us as elected officials would know about, like the effort between the Carter County Sheriff's Department, the Elizabethton Police Department, and the Emergency Communications District in jointly purchasing the records management system to better integrate cooperation between those three agencies. So there's all kinds of stuff going on. A lot of it we don't even know about, but that we're already doing jointly that's really successful. Items we identified that we need to work on that were real possibilities. Here again, I only listed a few of these that are going to bear on our discussion today, but number one was communication. This was a major topic. We don't sit down often enough. We don't talk together often enough. We don't build those bonds. So here again, what we're doing tonight touches on that. We did not have a common vision and a common set of goals. We're going to talk about those in a second because we did develop some of those. And the idea came out to hold joint quarterly meetings and even to possibly hold a joint retreat where we might tackle major projects, long-term topics. We'd go somewhere for 2 or 3 days, lock ourselves in a hotel room and have at it. So there were some really interesting ideas like that came up. But the idea to share our resources, to share our talents, to be more transparent with what we want and the goals that we set up. Yeah. If I thought I heard somebody say something. By the way, if anybody has any thoughts or anything, don't hesitate to just chime in. There's also a chat function you'll see on your screen where you can type in a question or something. If you have it, feel free to use that, but mostly just chime in. We won't feel interrupted at all. The idea was also thrown out to set up a liaison between the two governments, somebody from the county commission that would attend council meetings and vice versa. And then finally, educating everyone from citizens on up through elected officials and even department heads about what services are available between our two jurisdictions and how to easier navigate those. Now, I left that up on our list because I think that plays, when you start to talk about joint economic and community development efforts, that's an especially important function. I mean, if we ourselves don't know that, and we're the folks that live here, surely you don't know that if you're thinking about moving here from somewhere else. So these are some of the things that we thought we needed to work on. Every single one of those can bear into us doing some formalized structure together. So that's why I kept it on that list. We identified about 30 different goals. Let me back up. We identified way more than 30 goals, but there were 30 goals that the group thought it was worth moving forward on, or at least listing out. In other words, there were 30 goals that got more than 2 or 3 votes from our group in terms of things that we ought to focus on. All of these bear on our capacity to achieve them. And here again, these are not all of the goals we did. These are just some of them. Parks and Rec projects, joint participation in community activities, quality of life, tourism goals, that those should be clearly defined. Those should be actively managed and promoted. Community-based visioning. We've seen some of that happen on the city side in the past, and some of it happened when we were together. But we thought the thought was that should be a formalized process that should occur countywide. A clear and unified plan for economic and community development, and then some specific ideas like a sports complex, beautification efforts, solid waste and recycling, special events. I won't go down the list. Y'all should each have a copy of this report I think Abby sent to you, and I would really encourage you to look at it. But the reason I listed these goals were every single one of these can bear into a joint effort like what we're talking about. I mean, if you think about a branch library or joint long-range planning or the Bonnie Kate, you can't afford to do the Bonnie Kate all by yourself. We have to do it together. Grant writing, and then there were ideas like GIS, graphic information system. Why should we have those things as separate entities when graphic information system is something that benefits from an economy of scale that we could do together? So anyway, those were some of the basic things. There were 5 goals that sort of emerged from this whole thing. We did a process where we ranked and prioritized the goals, and there were 5 that came to the top of the heap as ones that we really ought to focus on. And those were, number 1, Surf Betsy. If you have not heard of Surf Betsy, you're not alone. A lot of us had not heard of Surf Betsy, but that is an initiative that is tourism based. It involves utilizing the river is the foundation for it. This very large family oriented activity, I guess is the best way to describe it. It's a big deal, very expensive, but would draw from hundreds of miles away into Elizabethton and Carter County. Second was the Workforce Development Project or Complex, owned by the county, used to be with Carter County Tomorrow till that folded. That's a real resource that's already had a lot of investment. It's a great piece of infrastructure. What do we do with it? The third goal was to expand sewer service beyond the city limits. And the fourth was to get broadband expansion throughout the county. Now, before I move on to number 5, I would like to ask, let me point something out about these 4. Every single one of these impacts the city and the county, and cities and the county. Johnson City, Watauga, because Johnson City partly in Carter County, Elizabethton, and the county. There isn't a single one of them that only affects one of those jurisdictions. Every one of them will affect us all. These know absolutely no political boundaries. Now, for those of y'all that were there at our session, before I move to the 5th goal, which is going to take us in a little bit different direction, comments, thoughts when you look back on those things that we were doing successfully now in common, things that we needed to start to focus on to do in common, and then that set of those 30 goals and even these 5. Any thoughts on those as you look back on them? You might have to unmute yourself, by the way, to speak. Some of y'all that were not at that meeting, what are your initial thoughts on these?
No one's going to speak up, so I will.
That's unusual.
Out of the 5 that are on the list, 4 of those are imperative for job generation. The countywide broadband, one of our commissioners has championed that, and he's right. The one thing that we don't say much about, those expanded sewer service. From a background of industry and industrial recruiting, I've learned my lesson in Jeffersonville, Indiana. I had a company ready to come to Elizabethton. I failed to ask one question. I'd like to see a sample of your effluent. The process was suspect, but I didn't ask that question. We had them ready to move, and our sewer system here could not clean up the effluent from their process. So that's one of the first things to ask is what kind of effluent do you have? Because if your system can't handle it and either handle it at a minimal cost, you may as well not, you've wasted your time. But other than that, a destination is essential, and the destination would be Surf Betsy. Other things they could do, the women could probably go shop here and there locally at some of the outlet malls over on I-26 or I-81. But these 5 items right here, if you tackle 3 of the 5 and set goals for a year, 2 years, these would improve the possibilities of getting more people in here. But there's one missing thing. Where are you going to house them? So that's a missing piece. Although Mr. Fraser, the county Fraser, not the city Mr. Fraser, has identified a lot of bed and breakfast. And some of them can handle as many as 20 or 30 folks. Doe River Gorge can handle in any given night 600 people. House them. So these are things that you learn sometimes the hard way, but you do try to remember them once you've made a mistake a time or two.
Say, Wes, you're on my screen so I can see you, and I know from the city. Can you give the brief 3-minute explanation of Surf Betsy for those who may not know what it is? Because you've actually seen one of those things, haven't you? You're muted.
He fell out of the boat there, Pat, but I'm not going to tell that on Wes.
I was trying to protect the people behind me when I fell out of the boat. But Surf Betsy got started a couple of years ago, and we took a crew and went to Nantahala over in Sylvan, North Carolina. And it's whitewater rafting, tubing. They pretty much control everything over there. I guess it's their dam situation. I don't know. It's not TVA. I don't know who they have over there, but it's just really a great opportunity for this area, not just Elizabeth and Carter County, but the whole area. They had, and Mike helped me on this, they had brought in $8 or $9 million a year and hundreds of thousands of people over there just to spend the day tubing and rafting down the Nantahala. And that's what we were looking at, Doe and Watauga, just like we had that meeting that time, Pat. You know, we have two gold mines right here. You've got the Doe, you've got Watauga, and we never have used any of those, really what we should be using them for. And, you know, it would be great. A lot of people are starting to, I know down in Sevierville, I think they're using the river down there now, Pigeon River, in Pigeon Forge. They're starting a surf deal down there. So, I mean, it's just great. And Mr. Von Cannon's right. You know, we have to have places for these people, because if this goes, I mean, you're talking hundreds of people in a week, and we've got to have places for them to eat, places for them to stay, and it would just be such a big boost for the economy here and everything. You want to add to that, Mike? Kim, one of you guys want to add to that?
Yeah, it was, we went over there in the off season. I'll never forget that, Pat. And it was just, it was incredible, the number of people that were there that day we were there. And it's a real simple process. You have a central location, and you have old school buses where they take you up the river, drop you off, put you in your float boat, and you float down the river. And we had the best time, most fun, safe, and it was just amazing, the concept and how it worked. It was real simple, but I was amazed at just how much money those people were making off of that river. And it's again, we have two rivers to work with. We're in the Doe, we could use it. It's like I'm gonna call it a kiddie pool. We're looking at just floating, you know, like inner tubes down that river, but also with the Watauga, a lot more water flow and, you know, a lot more, you know, things to do in the Watauga. But again, I'm pumped about Surf Betsy. I see a lot of money that the county and city and surrounding areas can make off this event.
Hey, I got to see the bottom of the boat from under the water. I was about 6 foot under before they finally got me back up.
We pulled him in.
Up at everybody.
Sounds a little dangerous.
It was my own fault.
Okay, well, thanks guys for explaining that. I just figured there were probably some people that didn't know exactly what that was. Well, anyway, then, so goal number 5, which actually was one of our top ones, but hang on, was this: an economic and community development director, jointly funded between all the cities and the county. Now, the interesting thing is, of a lot of these things that we've looked at, when I go back right to here, the things that we're already doing, I mean, the things that we're already doing are not going to, they don't survive without continued attention. The things that we need to work on obviously are not going to get done without continued attention, without new attention. And then all these goals, and especially these 5 biggies, unless we provide some sort of capacity to achieve them, it's just not going to happen. So this was the function and the goal that was designed to increase our capacity together in order to be able to achieve some of those other things. And by the way, anybody who was there or who has thoughts, please chime in as we proceed, because this is kind of getting to the guts of what we're here for today. Rick and I looked at what other jurisdictions are doing to be successful. Now, understand, recall, and maybe for some of those of y'all who are newly elected, you may not know, back in some years ago, I believe it was 1998, that the state mandated that every county have a joint economic and community development agency. Logan, if I'm speaking the terminology or the dates wrong, please chime in. This was at a time when the county was, all the land in every county across the state was identified. This was called the growth planning law and was identified as a particular type of parcel. Rural part of your jurisdiction. Help me out, Logan. I'm having a blank on
Urban growth boundaries.
Urban growth.
the urban growth boundaries. Thank you. So this was part of that law that every county then had this joint economic and community development group. Some cities and counties have been successful with it. Others have not. And of course, the one in Carter County in Elizabethton has gone through different iterations. Rick and I looked at 5 or 6. I talked to the rest of our consultants across the state and asked them to please identify for me the most successful ones that they have found, and if there are any variations to the state law. And so they sent me back this list, and those were the ones that we looked at. Here are some of the basic parameters of who that law says should be at the table. And this is the one from Elizabethton. So you have the mayors of the involved cities and the county. You've got a major landowner in agriculture. You have the Chamber of Commerce president, the president or the director rather of the electric system, because the electric system, of course, actually knows no boundaries. You have a member of the finance sector in the private sector. You have a member of manufacturing. You have somebody from the school system. You have somebody from the applied technology from TCAT in Elizabethton. And of course, then you have 2 members, additional members from the county commission and 2 members from the city council. That's 15 members. Now, which of those are flexible in terms of being or not being on this board? I'm really not sure, because obviously TCAT doesn't exist everywhere. But that's the basic parameter that the state law provides for. Logan, let me ask you to comment on that. Do you see anything different there than in your experience in other cities you've worked in?
Not particularly, no. Usually you have representation from every jurisdiction that's represented. The LPC, which in this case would be the electric system. And then the school system is usually a part of that in some way, shape, or form, because obviously attracting industry and enhancing quality of life has a lot to do with the school system.
Okay. And for those of you guys who don't know Logan, I mentioned her. She's the director of community development, economic or development services in Elizabethton, but she worked for some years in Morristown and then in a similar position in Greenville before she came to us. So she has a lot of familiarity with these sorts of organizations. So that's the way the state law sort of lays that out. So we have to have that organization. So I throw this out there just as a possible suggestion that so that we don't have to sort of reinvent the wheel. We have it. Okay. So Rick and I looked at other ones of these across the state, and I want to show you. Of those, here are the things. I think I have 4 or 5 or 6 bullet points. Here are the things that we found that those jurisdictions have in common that are really successful with their joint economic and community development boards, because a lot are not. A lot of them just did it because the state said you had to do it. They kind of sit dormant. They do the absolute minimum and so on. They've been through different iterations like ours have. The ones that we found that are really proactive and that have had a lot of success share these characteristics. Number 1, they're proactive. They set goals. They did exactly what we did at that last workshop and what we're doing tonight. They have not sat back and waited for the world to shape them. They've made a proactive effort to shape the world. Secondly, they have the right people at the table. We all know what it's like. Sometimes somebody just gets appointed to one of these boards and volunteers because they're not on any other board or whatever reason, but are not really interested in economic and community development. These organizations tended to put people at the table that were really interested in this particular subject and willing to devote some time and effort to it. And that especially holds true on the executive committee, which we're going to talk about here in a second. But obviously, a board of 15 people is too large to be really effective. So the right people at the table. Third, they set goals. They know where they're going, and they've all agreed on those goals. Fourth, they have resourced the thing correctly. The thing that we have got to remember is that it doesn't matter what you do with anything like this. If you don't resource it correctly, we might as well not do it. And by resourcing it correctly, Rick and I are going to show you, Rick put together a little pro forma budget for us to give us a sense of what something like this might cost. But, and then the fifth thing is that they hold themselves accountable, and the jurisdictions that they represent also hold them accountable. There's a whole bunch of different means that these organizations are held accountable, but those 5 items right there are the ones that are common to all the jurisdictions we found across the state that are being successful. And by successful, I mean that they're achieving their goals. They're bringing in industries. They're doing tourism. Whatever their goals are, they're achieving those. Any thoughts before we move on past this? Okay. So funding wise, before we get into the funding, the state provides a funding requirement for the Joint Economic and Community Development Boards. And what it basically says is that you will use gross county population, find the percentage of each jurisdiction in that. That same percentage is what each jurisdiction should pay in terms of the funding. So I'm just throwing up the state law for you there on it. Here is a pro forma budget that Rick put together for us. Can you guys see my pointer when I use it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. What we did was we did 2 people. This is a minimal budget. We provided a director at a salary of $80,000. Rick thought this was low. I thought it was in the ballpark, but the point is this needs to be a higher powered professional position. We provided for an administrative assistant that could work on some of the mechanics and the support side of the equation. We added in benefits. So your salary and benefits, this is here again, a minimal. This is a professional position and a support position. $150,000. We put in some money there then for utilities, office space, equipment, supplies, brochures, that sort of thing. We put in a hunk for conferences and travel. I mean, obviously, you're not going to put yourself on the map if you don't invest in the relationships that it takes to make these kinds of things happen. And that means putting somebody on the road and going to the right conferences and building the right relationships. We added in, I think, 10 or so % for miscellaneous. That gave us a total budget of $195,000. Here again, this is minimum. This is 1 professional, 1 support person. When you work out the population, sorry, it keeps doing that with my pointer here. When you work out the gross population, I did not have a good figure on the population of Johnson City that lives in Carter County. Does anybody know that off the top of their head? How much is it?
It's around 600 registered voters. I know that much, but as far as actual number of people, I'm not off the top of my head.
Okay.
Hey, Pat.
Yeah.
I think when you're working this number, Daniel, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, that gross population number should be the 57,000 because that would be 100% of Elizabeth and Carter County and Watauga.
No,
Is that right?
gross,
There's not 72,000 people in Carter County.
no,
I agree, Mayor. I think
Gross.
that's right.
let me
I
explain
think the
gross.
total Carter County and Elizabethton is 57 together.
Yeah, let me explain gross population because it really matters and it's in the state law here. Let me find that again so I can show it to you because it's the activities. Shall the funding formula shall be determined. Each governmental jurisdiction, you add the population of the entire county, okay, as determined by the last census, along with the populations of each city. Now think about that.
So the city doesn't get double tapped.
But that's going to give you a false, that 100% is, that's, I think what that means is if Elizabethton City wasn't in Carter County is what they're trying to say.
No, they're not. They're saying the reason that you're doing that, Mayor, is so that the citizens of Elizabeth and the citizens of Watauga who are also county residents don't pay twice. If you just did your individual share, you'd actually be paying twice because remember, you are a citizen of the county as well and you're already paying to the county. So gross population builds those functions in twice, and the gross population is 72,000. That is the county and each of the cities added in. That percentage works back out. Now, I'm not arguing the positive or negative of this. Remember, I'm just telling you what the state law says. Go ahead, whoever it was. It was
me, Pat. When we add Johnson City's numbers in there, those percentages going to change. The
they're total
less. And so
yeah, they're totally going to change. And we didn't have them. I called over there to the GIS division at Johnson City today, and they are going to get me those numbers tomorrow. So we'll have better figures for you. And I'm really sorry I didn't think to do that earlier. But anyway, so that's what growth. Does anybody not understand gross population? I'm talking if you agree or disagree with it. Does anybody not understand it?
I don't really understand it because I still feel like with that number, you're still double taxing everybody. You're taxing the city of Elizabeth and folks, and then we're hitting them with the county because to me, that 57,000, like Mayor Alexander said, is figured in as well.
Yeah, but remember, if you divide it back out is what you have to do. Do you have a better way of explaining it, Logan?
I guess at the end of the day, Pat, what I would look at is, let's say the total gross population is a 57,2 or 424.
Okay, do me a favor. Don't say gross population. Just say population.
Total population.
Yeah.
Of Carter County is 57,424. Out of that, 14,176 is Elizabethton. So if you take 14,176 divided by the 57,424, that's about 25% of Carter County is City of Elizabethton. I'll bet you at the end of the day that number works out the same if you take that gross population up to 57,424 and count 57,424 minus 14,176. Oh, you know what I'm saying. I don't know. It's just hard to wrap your hand around that because that almost makes you think that you've got a population of 72,000 people for the average person that looks at that.
That's right. Most people, just like you guys asking about gross population, most people don't understand it. Here's another way to think about it. 14,176 people. If we divided that out, that got a percentage of that of 57,000. Okay, and applied that to our 195,000 funding figure. The 14,000 citizens of Elizabethton are going to be paying what? You said 25% ballpark. 25% of the share of 195,000, right?
Yeah, that'd be 48,138.
Okay.
But
Actually-
their share of the Carter County is going to be less.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. I do.
What do
see
you
it.
mean Carter County? What do you mean
Well,
Carter County's?
never mind. I don't want to muddy the water. I understand. I understand.
No, you're making a good point, BA. You have to remember, as a citizen of Carter County, I have already paid again.
Right, I see.
So,
Hey, Pat, just to back you up, I mean, I know we've had a lot of discussion about where the formula, how it functions, but I think you're spot on as far as what the statute says.
but let me
You've got it
point
nailed.
one other key thing out to you guys. You have to use the formula that's provided by the state. Okay, so you have to use gross population, but there's nothing to say that any of the jurisdictions, including the city, can't contribute more. So if you somehow want to move it more towards a per capita formula, which is kind of what you're talking about, Mayor, the city can contribute more if it wants to.
And I guess that's what we've always done in the past, and that's what I've looked at, is we've just taken, hey, we're 14,176 of the population, so we're about 25%, and then we've just made it easy that way to understand. And I see where you're coming from on the total gross. It took me a minute for it to sink in, but I do see that. It's just, that's just going to be hard to explain to the average person.
The average person does not understand gross population and double taxation. They just don't get it. But there's nothing to say that you can't do it the way that you're talking about. The
Well, this
state's
way actually
is
helps us better. This is better on the city side to do it this way. You know, it means we pay less.
Well, actually, okay. Yeah, actually, you're not paying less. You're paying your proportionate share. But,
Yes.
but I
I
understand. All right. Well, let's don't get hung up here then, because you can put in more if you want to. I mean, the state law calls for it one way, but you can pitch in more. So, hey, great. But this is just to give you guys a sense. So we think it's about a $200,000 number to get the bare minimum jump started on this thing. Now, let me also add here really quick too. You could do a lot more. You could hire more professionals, and you could hire specialists in marketing, a specialist in tourism. You could make all those kinds of investments depending on how much you want to spend. So, question is where to go from here. Now, really quick, let me throw out a suggestion, and then you guys, Rick and I'll take notes. Couple things you can do. Have all the cities, because we need Watauga, we need Johnson City on board, to have them formally adopt what comes out of our day today, if we come out with some strategies, and that workshop report, have them formally adopt those as a blueprint. I don't know that after that first workshop that was done. If you guys think that the Joint Economic and Community Development Board is a structure worth us using for this, to have them formally adopt that workshop report as a blueprint. And I say blueprint so that it has some gray area in it and some fudge factor in you. Some things you'll do, some you won't do. Some will work, some will fail. And then to have all the cities and the county budget for this thing. Our budget cycle is about to come up within the next couple of months. Now's the time to do this. And that would shoot for a target date of sometime at least after July 1 that following year. We would formally start to implement this. But then the fourth thing is to have the Joint Economic and Community Development Board put an executive committee together. I mentioned that 15 is really just too many to get your arms around. I mean, my gosh, it's hard to schedule 15 people X number of times a year to get together, but have them appoint an executive committee, which is provided for in the law. It doesn't tell who the membership should be, but just provides for it. And have that executive committee then start to work on some details. I know when we talked about this earlier, it was decided that it probably should be housed somewhere at the county. The city didn't really have space, but to start to work on the little things that are going to matter: job descriptions, the recruitment process for the professionals, the accountability measures. How are we going to hold the feet to the fire, so to speak, of this agency, that they achieve these goals, and all of those sorts of things. So there's some potential strategies, and I don't mean to lead it off in one direction or the other, but let me stop talking and hear from you guys, and I'll take notes. And what do you guys think? What will work? What won't work? Is this headed down the road that you think it should or not?
Mr. Hardy, you've outlined the personnel aspect of this. You and I both know that to be successful, you've got to have land, you've got to have probably a spec building, or you've got to have land with with water to it, with the roadways in it. This is something that a small county cannot afford without big time help from somewhere. Block grants of $500,000 and whatever. Putting sewer into the county is a great thing because we don't have any land close to the city or close to the highway systems. To put sewer into some areas that I can think of on Stony Creek, which has land possibilities, ask your sewer and water people what it costs the mile to put in a 6-inch sewer line, which is too small, or 6-inch water line. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars per mile. Ask Johan Kudsey. I've asked him before, and I know that you're only talking about the tip of the iceberg with personnel. Land at what? $20,000 an acre minimum around here. $100,000 tops per acre. You're only talking about a tip of the iceberg to get into the business of economic development.
Pat, what do you see the normal wait time on if you was to develop like an industrial park, put your sewer in, all your infrastructure, compared to, say, the Matheson property? If the county city went in and got a good deal, bought it, and retrofit it to something that could come in.
I mean, I have no idea. It's I'm not a specialist in that profession. But if you look at the top 5 goals that were set at that workshop, really none of them, Surf Betsy, the workshop development complex, expanding sewer service beyond the city limits, good point, sir, whoever it was who was just talking about that, and the countywide broadband, all are fairly big ticket items, but none of them were industrial park related. Now, some of the other goals, I'd have to go back and look at those other 30 because I think some of them were, just my sense of it. Logan, you're in this profession, so chime in. But my sense of it is, I think most of the time we try to focus on large employers, the industrial development folks, and we try to do spec buildings and land and all that. And it's good, but it's high ticket items that don't tend to pay off that often. I think the more successful efforts like this you see or have smaller things that sort of piece together to become something big. I don't know, Logan, you've got a lot of experience in this too. Agreed.
I think that's a fair assessment. I think manufacturing has changed. Industry has changed. The things they're looking for have changed. When we get requests from the state ECD department to send in information about the sites that we do have, it's so highly specific. I think we have to understand that each project's different. And you may feel like your site is a home run, but I heard it explained just this week. We get a page, but there's a whole shelf of encyclopedias that Site Selector is using to make their determination about what they're going to use to determine what site is the best site for them. I think you're exactly right. There's such a better impact with incremental development and growth. And it's just hard to land those big fishes that are 1,000+ employers. It doesn't mean that they're not out there, but if you're only looking toward that, you're going to miss that incremental growth of the, 75, 125, 50 employees. So incrementalism, while not as exciting, is an important part of the process.
This is Jeff Treadway. I'd like to just maybe weigh in on that for just a second. It's true that I guess traditionally economic development has been focused toward industrial recruitment, but I believe, and I don't want to speak for the entire city council, but with our visioning, we have kind of put our eggs toward another basket, that being development of our outdoor recreational opportunities. Again, in terms of economic development, to bring people into our community, to spend money, to provide jobs for people who want to live here. In addition, to focus on our quality of life issues that where we could attract people, as is being shown right now, people that can work at home or don't even have to work in the same location where their actual company is, but can work over the internet. So there are other models, I guess, for trying to develop economically. And I think, Pat, I'm just, you've outlined the basis on how to get started, but I think the part of what we've talked about is a common visioning. And if the county and the city can come together with some sort of common visioning, we can direct the the areas of focus for our economic development group. That's it.
Other thoughts? I guess I kind of feel from the other workshop and maybe just today, like we're kind of at the crossroads of, do we want to do something together or not? I mean, and obviously the state mandates that we have this board, but there's a lot of those out there that really don't do much proactively with those boards or make much of an investment in it. So I guess, let me just throw that basic question out to you all. Do you feel like we should do something proactive with this and invest something in it? Or would you feel more comfortable with just it sort of sitting on the side?
Hey, Pat, this is Aaron Frazier from the County Commission.
Yeah, hey, Aaron.
This is something I've been hammering on since, I don't know, around August of last year, September-ish. I went to the basic economic development course with the CIS down at UT, and have gone through several other courses since then. Everything that you're saying is everything that they were basically covering through those classes. And I brought it up at least twice, just to get something like this started, and couldn't get the support for it.
Okay. I mean, is the county commission just sort of overwhelmingly satisfied with just sort of leaving the economic development agency the way it is, or are they split, or where are they kind of?
At the moment, I would assume that it's split, but Chairman Hill would be better one to speak on that because he may know more information about it than I do. But I know I'd worked with Ray Lyons, who was outgoing, and he'd worked with Mr. Estes, and Mr. Estes and I'd had the opportunity to have a conversation, and it's something that I think that there's many in both groups that are willing to do it, but getting everybody going in the same direction is going to take a very large step.
Aaron, I can't speak for the entire commission. I think, when you first presented it, I believe you had 3 or 4 positions, and you correct me if I'm wrong. I think it had about $400,000 price tag.
No, sir, 275.
Okay, well, I know there was a little bit of pushback, I think, on the amount for a recurring cost. So I think with what Ray and Mr. Estes were working on was a joint effort at maybe looking at maybe just the economic developer. And Daniel can correct me if I'm wrong on that. And I think after the last meeting we had, we talked with you, I think it was more of maybe just the developer and maybe a grant writer. And I know Mayor Woodby's been talking with the city about the old Chamber of Commerce building, about using it as the location, and she can touch base on that if she'd like to. I think it's definitely a go, but I think it's just working with the city to come up with a solid foundation of what both sides are looking for.
And I agree with Chairman Hill. I think in the discussions with Daniel, I think it's definitely something both sides are interested in, having that one go-to person, because I'm assuming that Logan right now may be fielding the calls for the county. We don't really have anybody to call up and say what's available. And we need that person. We need that person to answer those questions for both entities, in my opinion. And it's now and not later. It's here, and it's really yesterday. So that's really something I wanted to see accomplished tonight, was basically let's decide, yes, this is what we want to do. This is this position and a grant writer, who's going to house it, and possibly look at appointing an executive board to oversee that from the Joint Economic Development Board, which would be underneath that board to oversight those positions. That is was my thoughts along with what we were going to try to do tonight. And I hope we can at least get partial movement on that tonight. But yes, and Daniel and I have discussed the chamber building. We're waiting on our attorneys. I think we're waiting on some information from Roger Day, was per the county attorney, Josh Harden, on some questions we had about county purchasing city property.
Well, Mayor, I'll speak since Chairman Hill had a comment there. I'll say that, yeah, I think that I agree and concur. I think it makes sense for us to be in this venture together if we can work out the particulars and what that means. I appreciate what a lot has already been said, which is I think we need to have some consistency and a common understanding of what economic development is going to mean for us. And I think if the county is successful in economic development, the city will be, and vice versa, because as I tell one of my cliche phrases, we are them and they are us. We're all living here together, and working together. So the more we're pulling in the same direction, the better off we're going to be. I think also that some of it may be traditional economic development, but I think to Councilman Treadway's point, there's a lot of value hanging out there, and what wouldn't be traditionally, economic development is not heavy industrial, but if it's tourism, that type of outdoor amenity things, we can take those things on. But I'll say this, I think we've got to have some, no decision will be unanimous. It just never is. But if there's some consensus that's built to move things forward, I think that's what I would be interested in hearing. Again, I get 0 votes out of 7 on the council, and I definitely don't get any votes on the county commission. I'm merely here as staff to try to help. But I think the Joint Economic Community Development Board could be a good vehicle for this, particularly if you let an executive committee that represents, the major parties at play, which is these two organizations that you're looking at here today, is the county and the city. We're in this one together. You've got good representation on that board. I think that gets you a place to have a good handle on how economic development moves forward. And again, I'm interested to hear and have discussion and understand. I want to first understand where our county commissioners are, because we need to understand where you're at so we can try to move forward and see where things make sense.
And I will say, I think it's something we definitely need to move on in the next month or so, because both sides are starting our budget processes. So we need to kind of have, that will be a fairly large reoccurring cost every year that we need to take in consideration.
I will, a couple other things you all have said there made me think. Economic development is one of those things that benefits from an economy of scale. You really it's hard to go it alone just because it requires such an investment in the future. It's just like buying a house. You know, if you're a single person and you buy a really big house, it's just hard to go a big house alone when you're single. But if you're part of a family, and especially a 2-income family, it's just 10 times easier to be able to invest in a house. And it's like that with economic development. The other thing I want to mention too, the gentleman who talked about industrial development, I forgot a really important thing to say about that is it's not just that there's other ways to go about development like tourism and other things, but industrial development is one of those things where you do need to be prepared in case. So when somebody calls, there's nothing worse than we don't know what office to call. We'd have looked at you guys, but we didn't know what office to call. You guys couldn't tell us jointly what land you had or what spec building or what your utilities were. You hadn't done your homework. Boom, I'll go to the next guy because like Logan said, there's encyclopedia full on that shelf. So even though you don't have to spend all your resources doing industrial recruitment, you can sure spend some of your resources being prepared for if it does come by, you're able to react to it.
Hey, Pat, you reminded me of one thing, and I didn't mean to talk again, but one thing came to mind that I meant to mention. Some context, from the broader regional scope. I think that's useful. I'm sure everyone's seen in the news where there's discussion about a regional hub for economic development. What does that mean for the broader region? Trying to get everyone on the same page and not necessarily competing with each other, but let's all be together and be consistent in how we do economic development at a broader scale. And you've seen discussion about how NetRep would move forward. Maybe it'll be folded into this new regional hub and how that's going to work out. I know that discussion's ongoing, but I expect it to move forward, and we'll get some more solid answers over the next month or two. And I know there's some on this call who can speak to that, and please speak up to it. But I think it might be useful for us if we undertake whether we want to commit to move forward to work on this, and then we also then can keep our eye on how that develops and how we can be complementary. I don't think it makes sense for us to necessarily duplicate what that larger group would do if they're going to do it. And to your point, Pat, about building a big house, and that's one for the region. If they're really strong and have a lot of talent and well-resourced, well, that'd be a benefit to us. We can use that talent to market what we have in Elizabethton and Carter County. But then we need to find how we're complementary to that, not duplicate or not compete with, but dovetail with them as we move forward. But again, I'm coming back to say that presupposes that we all want to move forward at all.
And Daniel, I think that goes back to what Pat just said, being prepared. Having that person in place that is going to work with the hub and that is moving quite quickly. We meet again tomorrow at lunch to discuss the bylaws of that, which will be the 8 counties. But that's looking very promising. And once again, we need to start making decisions because that's moving quickly. And I'm not real sure what role NetRep will play with them. They will play a role, but it won't be nearly as significant as they've been playing.
I heard you say the timing is right.
Yeah, the timing is now. The bylaws are getting ready to be passed, and the members and so forth are getting ready to be selected. That's an update from my meeting last week. So it's the perfect timing because we're in the budget process, and the regional hub is getting ready to be implemented. So we need representation for Carter County and the city of Elizabethton.
Hey, Richard Barker, you've been in the banking business, which is the tentacles have reached on out to all edges of the county. And what are your thoughts on all this? You're muted, by the way. Hey, Richard, you're muted. We can't hear you. Can you where is the down in your lower left corner might be a line. Now we got you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yep. I've been muted the whole time for some reason. Pat, I really just see a distinct advantage in working together to do this. We've got to do something, and we got to start somewhere. And It's just industrial recruitment is so hard right now with the way the situation, the economy is, but economic development per se is just, it's so important to me to try to generate some more commerce and business for the whole county, including the city of Elizabeth.
Some of the rest of y'all, I hate to call you, but I don't know you, and I see your names: Kelly Collins, Robin, Mike Hill, way on up in Roan Mountain. How do y'all feel?
I had a question as where is NetRep? I would think they would need to be involved in this particular meeting and decision. I'm a little unclear as to why they're not here being represented.
Because it was a joint city council, county commission workshop.
Yeah, I don't think an invitation was submitted to them just for it being the city and the county workshop. But as I was saying, NetRep is slowly going to dissolve with the hub coming around. That's what we're doing. When this is, the bylaws will be passed hopefully soon, and NetRep's role will minimize. So that is what the time restraint is here. I'm not real sure what role NetRep's going to continue to play.
Well, that's why I would think they would want to be involved to see where they're going and if they're staying or helping this county or what. I just kind of feel like we've been a little let down with them because, I mean, regional and local will go together with this type of thing that we're talking about with tourism and economic development too. So, you know, if they're not going to be regional for us, then who is?
It's called it's the hub. That's what I'm saying. This is it's been all over the news. Well,
I know I've seen that, but are we going to vote on that on commission or?
No, has nothing to do with the commission. It just has to do, we'll be represented as part of the 8 counties. It's automatically, we receive representation, and there'll be a board of directors put together, and the members will be included from private industry, and it will be funded by private industry.
Does anybody want to know the quick background on that thing, or is everybody kind of familiar enough with it?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you give the background on it? Because it's
the 50,000 foot thing. The only reason I know anything about it was they had called and asked Rick and I if we'd help come facilitate part of it. And so for the last year or 2 years, we did that. Recall there was a giant private sector effort, put a lot of money into it to do a big regional thing. And they came up with the regional name of Appalachian Highlands was what came out of that.
Yeah.
It basically was a footprint that touched where the hospitals are and went into, I think, 3 other different states, went into Virginia, North Carolina, might have gone. Remember if it went into South Carolina. But anyway, didn't go South Carolina, Logan. Okay. But it went into Virginia, North Carolina. And so it was a really large effort. And I'm paraphrasing here, but government really was not at the table very much, if at all. And I think sort of felt to the side. And of course, they have something really important. They have the most important economic development tool that's ever been invented, and that is infrastructure, water and sewer and roads. That's where your economic development comes from. If you don't have that foundation, you got nothing. But they weren't at the table. So in reaction to that, a number of mayors got together, and by mayors I mean county and city. The calls I got were from Johnson City, Washington County, Sullivan County, and asked, hey, we really already have a mechanism that we are all at the table with, and that is the development district, because the development district board are all of the mayors. Could we get the development district together and talk about how can we get to the table with the private sector so we're all in this thing together, because it's just not going to work apart. So that was the impetus for this whole thing starting. And then from there, it went numerous meetings of what's working, what's not working, What goals can we set? What kind of organization would we establish? How would it be funded? All of that sort of stuff happened. And the result is where they are now, which is to form this organization. So that's the big piece. My sense of it is the mid-sized piece, which is each of the joint economic and community development agencies, the ones of those that are really strong and are prepared and can get themselves to the table when they're needed to be at the table with this new organization are probably going to be more successful. And just because they're themselves investing in their share of it. But anyway, the upshot is it's going to be a subset of the development district, largely private sector funded, as I understand it at this point. Rick and I are out of it now because it doesn't need any more facilitation. But that's the background. So the upshot is there is movement going on in this whole giant sector of economic development, marketing, tourism. You know, let's try and get it bigger, broader. Let's try and do it together. There is some real serious movement and investment, not just from the public sector, but also from the private sector. So the mayor is exactly right. The timing is pretty good right now to be looking at your piece of that and how you would strengthen your piece of it.
Pat, I don't want to take much time either, but this is Jeff Treadway again. When John Hartman was still here, I know John had a couple of meetings, and I know there was one about especially industrial recruitment, what went on with that. And what I took away from the presentation that John gave was, as we're saying, if there's an industry looking to locate to your area, you've got to be ready for them. And to tap on something Logan said, they're pretty specific in what they're looking for in terms of size, access, transportation, infrastructure, and so forth. They're pretty specific on that. And I know the state has those certified sites with the economic development group so that, they have a list of places that are ready to go. But the thing is, those entities have put in a tremendous amount of money to develop that infrastructure, to purchase that property, to do all the things to have that site. And I know some of the discussion at that time was, we could be in a position where we invest several $1 million in a certified, ready site, but we may have to sit on it for a while. And we may be getting into the weeds here as far as economic development, but I think we need to, that's part of the considerations that we need to have in moving forward, with our joint economic development board and director, or whatever we want to call this person, that they have a sense of direction on what's being expected, from the entities in the group.
Mr. Hardy.
Sure.
It appears that we need to come out of this meeting with something tonight. Let me suggest one thing.
Okay.
You've got to have a point person. That point person traditionally, in many cases, has been the mayors. It has been an assigned person like Logan Engel. It's somebody that knows in detail the workforce capabilities. They've got to know transportation, because that's part of it. Transportation in, transportation out is a big part of any manufacturing. And I don't know anything about anything except manufacturing. But I know that somebody needs to be the point person immediately, assigned that job. It could be maybe two people, somebody in the county, somebody like Logan for the city. It could be the mayors, But they've got to know in detail a lot of things about the county, educationally, transportation. You've got to know manufacturing costs. You've got to know what's available as far as building and building size. First thing you got to find out is what they need in size of building. The number one thing. The second thing they'll ask you is, believe it or not, I've placed 60 plant startups in my life now. And one of the things they will ask you is about a library, believe it or not. And there's no question we've got that. There's no question that we've got 5 educational opportunities in this county, from a college to high school voc programs. We've got that. What we don't have is somebody like Greene County had 3 guys, Dr. Kilday, you may remember, and 2 others, Elmer Cox being one. They would buy a dairy farm, the 3 of them, put roads into it with block grants, and then sell it back to the county. Therefore, the county didn't have to bear the expense of site-ready places for industry. Telford is the same thing right now. Of course, they've got a 396,000 square foot building available. That was the Bush Hog building. Right now, Toyota, not Toyota, but one of the Japanese companies is wanting to expand, but they want tax abatement. That's another thing, tax abatement. If you negotiate with the company, they're going to want several years. They're going to want 2, 3 things. They're going to want the land free. They're going to want tax abatement for X number of years. And those are, they may want you to put sewer to the land, for example. You ask anybody that's done any work with Walmart and see what they get. They'll get a sewer line to their property they'd buy. They'll have that before they buy the property, I can assure you that. That's another story, Walmart. But anyway, the point person is important almost immediately. If people aren't going to run in here and say, I want to put an industry in your community, who brings them to you? You very seldom will dig one up yourself. It's friends you know from the past. It's tips from other states where they can't place them or haven't placed them, that they will send you tips. And I've gotten a few from Alabama. There's a reason for that. It might be a relative that placed Nissan in the state of Tennessee, but those things of background are important. And Engel, you're a youngster, but I'm impressed because I've worked with Engel a little while. She didn't help me, but then again, I didn't expect any help. I never received any so far. So $23 million into your economy is not bad for one person.
Mr. Von Cannon, you can't say she didn't try.
Well, there's one thing for sure. You won't catch me on the couch watching NASCAR.
Well, all righty, guys. I guess my question is, where do you want to go from here? Just a thought. Or go ahead. Whoever's go ahead.
Charles, it's Richard Barker. One thing I've got a little bit concerned about is you mentioned Greenville and Greene County, and it seemed like they gave a lot of incentives, but once the incentives ran out, a lot of those companies kind of abandoned and moved on elsewhere. And I think that's something we got to be really careful with is staying power of a potential industrial recruitment. What do you think, Pat?
Richard, that's the name of the game. Some companies do that. because the bottom line is we lost Ident. We've lost several here because after 20 years, about the only one we've kept has been Snap-on. Really, if you look at it over the years. When tax abatement runs out, they're gone.
My concern is some of them stayed 5 years and then left, and that doesn't give you any kind of return on your investment.
That's right. Correct.
Okay, well, one idea that has come in is to have the mayors of the two mayors appoint somebody. My suggestion, Mr. Von Cannon, with due respect, would be that the appointment should be where I see you right now is a matter of political will, not administrative will. And Logan is administrative will, not political will. So I would think those mayors need to find a champion within. Oh, by the way, that's something I forgot to mention earlier. When we looked at those 5 points that made the other jurisdictions successful, they did not have a champion. They had multiple champions. Not one person was driving that train. Multiple people were helping to drive it. But anyway, suggestion just got chatted in to have the mayors appoint maybe a champion from each of their respective commissions and city council. And I'm going to guess that the idea is that those two people put something together to put in front of the full county commission and in front of the full city council. I kind of think at this point in the gauging things, where it looks like a matter of political will. Maybe we could write something up about this meeting, and show that blueprint that came out of that workshop, put it in front of the county commission, put it in front of the city council, and say, here's a ballpark thing. Are we committed to moving forward on it, or would you rather just kind of stay where we are and gauge the interest? And if there is interest in moving forward with it, then put some more details to it. Have those champions find a couple of other champions and do some things like stick it in the budget and do the job descriptions and, move on it that way. But,
Mr. Hardy, I didn't mean to say that a point person was the only person involved. The point person, if he's smart, or she, will take the prospect to the county mayors, and they will discuss, to get to know each other. Then the point person's job is to give them the details of what's available and based on what they need. And it's vitally important, though, that you have the people that move and shake in the community behind you. It may not be, in addition to the mayors, it may be someone that is a successful dentist or somebody that can, like a Don Tiedrick, that can rah-rah the community. That's what I'm saying. That the
Gotcha.
one person's got to be the final.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Some of the rest of you guys, Gary Bailey, Daniel, Robin, thoughts, general reactions.
Pat, it seems like if we're going to go in this as a unified group, we need to come up with a mission of where we're going, a vision of how we're going to get there, to determine, the person we want to put as the joint economic developer, whether it's 100% tourism, and that's who we go after, and let them come up with businesses, identify properties to get those businesses in here.
I don't think it can ever be all 100% tourism.
No,
Tourism
I
is
don't
part
either.
of it, but you've got to be able to dive on, getting the schools involved, getting entrepreneurship involved, pulling TCAT in, getting Northeast State in. It's not just trying to go for tourism. You've got to push for entrepreneurism as well. Right. According to the state and the CIS, right now, the number one job growth in the state of Tennessee is homegrown entrepreneurship for creating businesses in counties.
Right. Small business.
That's what we need to identify, what we want, so that we can find that in the person to push those visions. for the county.
This is Jeff again. Is that not what we're talking about doing here? Is allowing the Joint Economic Development Board to take input from all of the members of that board and help define for us a direction on which we're going. And then once the funding's been put into place by the members of the board, to select the individual, and then that person becomes, as Charles is saying, the point man. Somebody has an inquiry, they go to the director, and whatever information they need, he or she, they either have, or they know where to go get it, or they know which leaders in the community to speak with. Isn't that what we're talking about, or have I totally missed what we're talking about?
Jeff, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's exactly correct. I think the Joint Economic Development Board could even, produce an executive board with a small amount of numbers to also handle that. That's where I was leaning, and I wanted to get a consensus from this group. Is that where we're leaning together?
Mayor Woodby, it's Richard Barker. I think that's an appropriate idea, and I think it's where you need to start.
Thank you. I think so too, but I want to make sure it's the consensus of the commission and the council to start there and begin this search.
This is Jeff again. In my mind, in the past, we have had Carter County Tomorrow and other groups. We had an industrial recruiter. But as of right now, today, who is speaking for Carter County, Elizabethton, Watauga? Who speaks for us in terms of economic development?
Mr. Treadway, that's Logan Engel. ECD by default calls Logan.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
and John before me, we were listed as the contact for any type of industrial recruitment.
Okay, but you're not. We want to try to go a step further, right, and have somebody who's out there actively, as was pointed out in Pat's budget, going to conferences and showing the flag at least for our community, letting us be known, being publications and those sort of things. Yeah, you guys are being the point of cut, but I think we need to be more proactive, I guess, is what I was hoping for.
Mr. Treadway, I'll say that I think you're hitting on, I think, what kind of drives where we're headed on this is Logan splitting her time with traditional development and planning stuff that you'll see cities need to do. And she's also taking on economic development role just by default. But also then, so she's splitting time, and those sometimes pull in different directions. And that's a constraint on how much you can get done, because you can't devote your full time to it. But then, so that's why the city needs help. We want to have somebody more fully dedicated to this. I think the county needs help because we need y'all with us together, because when we're pulling together, we'll be doing better.
Well, and Daniel, just to piggyback on what Mr. Von Cannon was saying with a point person and what you're kind of implying, I go back to my house analogy. If you look at what came out of that workshop and that set of goals, and I'm talking about just those 5 goals, much less the other 30, the one thing that everybody realized right off the bat was we, meaning all the cities and the county, just don't have the capacity to make those things happen. We simply don't. In the house analogy, if you want to have a family, and you're going to build a house, you build a house with a couple extra bedrooms for the family that you're going to have on down the road. But it's extremely expensive again to do that, because you're investing in something that hadn't happened yet. Mm-hmm. And you have to, the payoff is on down the road. It's the same thing here. That list of goals are the kids. And if we're going to have those kids, and if we're going to grow those kids, then we're going to have to make an investment now that's difficult to make. But that was the stale point that everybody got to after that workshop was great goals. Love to make them all happen. Who's going to do it? We just don't have the capacity. And then we added the goal of let's do a joint economic development thing. So in order to begin to add that capacity. So that's actually how we got here.
Beth, this is Jeff again. I'm sorry. I'll be quiet and let some other folks. But where you just left off there, where do we go from here? I mean, I think you've outlined a good roadmap for us on how to proceed with this. That each of our bodies, at least approve the sense that we're trying to work together, and that we need a point person through the Joint Economic Development Board to do that. And then, using your pro forma budget, let the joint the board go over that, present the budgets to each one of the entities, and try to move forward from there. I mean, this is the only thing I have heard since the Carter County Tomorrow went defunct. I mean, I don't know who's out there speaking for us, and at least this would get that started.
Well, and Jeff, the reason I said to attach that workshop report was people tend to invest in something when they see what they're going to get for it. And that list of potential things, and that may not be the list that this joint agency works on in the end, but at least you look at that list of goals and you go, wow, some of those would be pretty amazing if we could accomplish. People tend to invest when they see exactly what they're going to get for their money. And in the absence of having something like that report attached, you're just investing in the agency at that point. So I think it's important for people to see that some work has been done on identifying a common direction and some common specifics, I should say. Now, a couple of y'all said earlier, and I think it's really true, if this happens, one of the first things that group needs to do is lock themselves in a room for a day and come up with a different or expanded or whatever very specific common vision and set of goals, because that's what you guys need to hold them accountable to.
This is Ross Garland from the County Commission. I'll speak.
Hey, Ross.
I like the blueprint. I mean, it's got to be a stepping stone for us, a place to start. I think, and we need to have this, got to have the point of contact for both of our organizations. We need to get it to commission. I think there's some questions that I'm sure 24 people from our board would ask, and I'm sure the same for city council. I think the earliest convenience of possibly February to get it going, because budget is right around the corner. I think that it's tough to really get 80% of the funding. I know that's hard for a county commission, some people to digest that, but that's kind of the reality we're looking at, because I mean, it's not like we're rich county, rich city. So I guess in a return on investment, that's what we're looking at. And I know CCT, they had a director at one time, and was it paying off? That was before I was, involved in all this. And did it really pay off? And what kind of time frame we looking at before we really see if this is working out for both of the city and county organizations for us? That's kind of questions I have, but I think we got to move forward on it. We've kicked it down the road long enough. And, if we don't actually put it on the floor and try to make a move on it, we're just going to be talking about it again next year. So that's kind of my thoughts. I think the numbers look good for a director. 80K, it might sound a little bit low, but it's a place to start. If they're working hard and doing good for us, we can always push that up. Grant writing, I think we have some people that are capable in the city and county that probably can do that, but it'd be great to have somebody that's capable in that position. But just kind of my idea. I don't, if we're trying to form a new board, I'm not really into that. I think the Joint Economic Board, if possible, if they could kind of make these decisions now, because as Mr. Hardy said, the political will is the thing. It seems like people don't really want to take on the responsibility or step up and try to make these decisions. So just creating another board, I think, is just creating more time and making it a longer process for us. So just my ideas. I think it needs to be on the board pretty soon. Just some discussion. to where we can bring it to full commission to our budgets and try to get some numbers straightened out.
Ross, this is Jeff again. You're right about budgets, but again, budgets are a reflection of the priorities of the groups that set them. And what was the county share there? 155 or something. What are you talking there? A penny and a half on the tax rate. For the city, it's about the same. And the question for the bodies would be, is that a priority for us? Is that worthwhile to fund? And, you know, I'm coming down on the side, yes, it is. But your point's good. Some of the criticisms about Carter County tomorrow, about were they paying off? And I thought those questions, they were good questions, and maybe not totally fair sometimes, because there we were in the worst recession since the Great Depression, and
until now,
recruitment's kind of hard, yeah. But as Pat has laid out about what the successful groups are doing, they have goals and objectives, and if we help the board establish goals and objectives on a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, whatever schedule, that's how we measure their performance. Are they being able to accomplish those goals? And is it because, then why is that? Is it because of lack of funding? Is it because of lack of effort? But that's what we use to hold them accountable for us. So,
yeah,
if
I
it's
understand.
Richard,
Let me say this, Jeff. I wasn't trying to say anything bad or anything negative about Carter County tomorrow. I was just using that as an example. I know we had a director there,
right. Lesson learned, yes.
Yeah, because we went through. I've been on that when I first got on this commission, 6 years ago. That was a debacle that we fussed and argued about month after month. So I wasn't saying anything about the lack of job they were doing or anything like that. Just it was that situation where you have a director and somebody really leading the charge and the point of contact. If the investment was there in that. That's all I was saying. Okay.
and Jeff, it's Richard. I think it's extremely critical to have the right person or persons in those positions. I think that hurt Carter County tomorrow, and that we just didn't have the right person leading that.
What kind of a timeline are we looking at to give this a go?
ASAP, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday.
Yeah.
Let me jump in.
That's what
Go
I'm
ahead,
wondering
I'm sorry.
too, with the Carter County tomorrow problems that occurred and the community's awareness of it. I think when they realize that we're wanting to invest $195,000 per se of their money, they're going to want to say, hey, what are we going to see out of this and how long is it going to take before we see it? So I'm just curious if there's a timeline in there for when this may start showing some rewards.
That's a great question, because economic development, if there's one truism about it, it's that seeds get planted today that sprout on down the road. Very, very rarely does someone call and say, hey, my factory's moving to your town next week and I want to hire, 75. It's more of an investment thing that's longer term. So that's why measuring it has always been so difficult.
This is Jeff again. You're right. That's why I said about the goals and objectives. What are we expecting the person to do?
Yeah.
Make so many contacts, to attend so many conferences, to get so many packets of information into the hands of prospects. I mean, it's like a sales job almost. I mean, you don't know when that big sale is going to come. It may come soon or it may come later. But like you say, you're working constantly that field to get the information out there. And that, I mean, that's what the expectation should be.
I mean, those are great questions about how long, and it's funny, you know, don't get me wrong, $195,000 is not an insignificant amount of money. It's a lot of money. But on the scope of the size of the budgets of the jurisdictions we're talking about, it is a small amount of money, and it would only take one Dollar Tree to come in here in the county, and you get your $195,000 back if you got the right Dollar Tree. Surf Betsy would generate it in probably 1 month. The Bonnie Kate Theater, if it were rehabbed and did the kind of shows that the Paramount does or something like that, would get it back for you in the course of a year. So, you know, and any one good hit and good effort could get you your investment back a lot quicker than you think. Now, one of y'all said, and it's really true, we got to get the right professionals, and you got to get people that can work hard and can juggle, because you got multiple balls in the air. You've got marketing, you've got tourism, you've got industrial development. You have the things Mr. Cannon talked about. All those balls are in the air, and you got to have somebody that's really top notch that can juggle them. But it only takes one good hit for the payoff to happen. And when it happens, the payoff happens year after year after year.
And sometimes it promulgates on itself too, doesn't it, Pat?
Oh yeah.
One leads to further development. I mean, we've got empty buildings downtown that really could be economic drivers if we could convert them into the right area. I mean, look at the Barnes Bourne building. It hasn't been open in 10 years. It could be a gold mine. I mean, it could be a Mass General store.
Yeah,
There's a lot of potential downtown to develop some of these buildings that are either unoccupied or underoccupied right now. So,
one thing to remember about some of those, Richard, the owners of them don't care.
And you know, that's something we've discussed, you know, at workshops at the council meeting, and some of the other municipalities have thought about putting in a vacant property surtax. And that's probably something we need to do, because the benefit to the community is much greater if those buildings are viable and usable, and having them sitting there for decades and not being utilized is really a deterrent to economic development rather than a benefit to economic development. That's what I'd like to see is let's implement a tax. If you're going to have a building sit vacant, then implement a tax. If your building is worth $200,000, but you think it's worth $1 million, then let's tax it at $1 million. So, I mean, make it an incentive for them to sell the buildings and put them back into vibrant use in the community. And I've said enough.
Well, guys, what if I see we're coming up on 2 hours here, and I still appreciate everybody's efforts. What if we write a little summary of what's gone on tonight and attach that report to it, give it to each of the mayors, and say, hey, appoint somebody that was here that heard all this, and have them present it to the jurisdictions and get some reaction. What do you think? Is this something you want to adopt or not? And go from there. And if the answer is yes, we want to adopt it, then we can stick a budget figure in our budgets and get an executive committee of the JECD going, and, you know, some of those kind of mechanics that'll start the wheels turning. How does that sound? Or does somebody have a better or a different idea for how to proceed?
That's a good idea, Pat. I agree.
Pat, I was going to propose, I think the JECDB is meeting tomorrow. So we're trying to get that group back off the ground, and I appreciate everyone trying to do that. So I think that, again, that's a good timing. But I think it would be useful to give them, if we're going to actually undertake this and want to try to move forward, to let them start on that. Again, I kind of look at it, you know, making plans for what happens over the next 5 months or so. Because to your point, Pat, we've got to get something solid under us before the next fiscal year starts. You might as well say July 1 as a start time, not to have somebody on board and we hit the ground running. No, like between now and July, we get the budget in place, and then you start looking at maybe hiring somebody. You take the next 5 months to figure out, again, what's a consensus on what what we think the priorities ought to be. Then we'll see how the regional hub for economic development, if it's going to be the successor for NetRep and how that's going to unfold. We'll see that, and we'll get to budget for it over the next 5 months. So the bodies get to see that and try to plan and see what can be done. Like all those things kind of are all rolling out at the same time. And if we had that in mind, moving forward for next fiscal, I think that gives, if it's going to be the Joint Economic Board or the executive committee of it, that really spearheads where we move, that again, that would be useful. But I know we've heard from some of the city councilmen, and I hate to push, but I'd like to see some consensus if there is any. If the answer is no, don't do that, that's a perfectly acceptable answer. But I'd like to hear from some of our friends at the county if there's some ideas on that. If you like it, if you don't like it, I'd rather know than not know.
And just as a reference point, 7 members of that Joint Economic Community Development Board are actually in this call right now. So they're kind of, right. They're also getting that information that they can discuss tomorrow night during the meeting. Charlie's on there as the industry person.
And this is Jeff, speaking as a city councilman, not for the rest of the council, but I believe you might be able to get a consensus from the council members here to have it as an agenda item for February.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, I do too. Mm-hmm.
I'm good.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, Rick and I will draft something up then for y'all and get it to you tomorrow. There's just a quick summary of the workshop and this meeting. We'll attach that other report with it. And we'll put in there a couple of the suggestions that have been made tonight about how to proceed and see what your boards come up with and see what kind of will there is to make it happen or not. Does that sound acceptable?
Thank you, Pat. Thanks, Rick.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Thanks, Pat. Appreciate you, Rick. Thank you, guys.
And anything else before we bug off then for the good of the cause?
Pat, do you want to consider the next meeting of this group?
It's up to y'all. If y'all want to meet again, we'd be glad to be involved, but sure.
Well, I would suggest maybe a couple of months to come back and see where we are on this particular issue. And, by then we may well be on our way and could maybe take up another issue or something.
Okay.
Okay. Say late March.
Okay. That sounds good.
Okay.
Pat and council, my office, we'll work on some dates for late March and get those out and see what works best for everybody, kind of like we did for this meeting, if that's okay with everyone. I'll have that.
Okay. All righty, guys. Well, sounds good. Appreciate everybody's time and efforts. Thank you so much, and hopefully we'll see what everybody thinks, and if not, either way, we'll see you again in a couple months.
Pat, thank you, and I want to thank the council and the commissioners for joining tonight and let's working together. It's really impressive, and I hope we can continue to do it. And I want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
sure welcome. Hey, Logan, any chance you can stay on for 2 minutes?
Sure thing.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Fraser. Bradley. Stay out of trouble, brother.
Commander. Yes, sir, Master Chief.
Hey, look, well, we may not end up on here. So let me see here if I can remove people. I think I can.
I think Abby's still live streaming too, Pat.
Oh, we're live streaming? Okay.
Yeah, she live streamed it on YouTube so as well.
Pat, it's Richard. I'm signing off.
Okay. All right. See you, Richard.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, you're sure welcome.
Okay. Thank you.
Pat, you want me to stay on or you want me
If you want to, Rick, but, yeah, I was just gonna
to?
touch base with Daniel and Logan
Okay.
and just see how they thought things went, if we're on the right track or not.
Okay.